All right, today we are a little closer to 4 o'clock than 3 o'clock. As we said last week, we might not be on until 4 o'clock, but we were planning actually to be on at 3, but we had some technical difficulties with our guest, and so he will be joining me via Twitter Spaces, but I think we may actually have a picture of him at the same time. So we're going to try to combine technologies to get you what we've been trying to get done in the last 45 minutes or so. In any event, Paul Webster, let me tell you.
Been 45 minutes. You're exaggerating. It's only 23 minutes.
Spaces, of course, is muted. It's 23 minutes since the top of the hour, but we started at 1:45.
Hey, everybody on Spaces. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be having a guest on in mere minutes.
Exactly. And that will be Paul Webster. And let me tell you about Paul Webster really quickly here and get all the information. Paul is for the LA Alliance for Human Rights. They apparently won a big lawsuit recently. I didn't know anything about that, but it's going to be very interesting to hear about that. Also, he is founder of Hope Street Coalition, a nonpartisan alliance for combined action focusing on awareness and treatment of homeless, mental illness, and addiction. Let's get right to it.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
Hey now, everybody. We are out on Restream watching you all, and so I know you've been there with me as I was complaining about how long we've had to keep you waiting, so I appreciate that. Appreciate you all being very patient with this. Should be an interesting conversation today. We are going to spend a little time taking calls as well off of Twitter Spaces and also your comments and questions here, both at Rumble. Let me look at that page real quick. Okay, nobody really in there yet. And of course, as always, on Restream. And who is calling me daddy? Don't call me daddy. Who was that? Somebody already calling me daddy.
Daddy Drew.
All right. Let's see. I'm looking at anything else going on the Restream. Sorry, guys. Let me just look at it.
Let's test out the Twitter Spaces with our guest because we got to set him up. I don't know. I don't see him there.
I've got him. He's Hope Street.
Okay, good.
And let's get him up here. I think he can just start speaking. Am I right about that, Caleb? Is it?
Oh yeah.
Yes, he just has to unmute himself.
Yeah, so just unmute yourself.
Let's hope his mic's working on his phone.
Go. Oh boy. Paul, are you there?
There he is.
How about now?
There you are. Perfect.
I'm a Luddite. This technology thing, right?
Well, it's the first time we've heard your voice since we blew up your computer. So thank you for bearing with us.
The bill is the invoice is in the mail, right?
Right, exactly. So talk to us. First, tell us about the LA Alliance and the Hope Street Coalition. Then I want to hear about this lawsuit.
Sure. Yeah. So the LA Alliance for Human Rights is a group of, frankly, frustrated businesses, residents, even members who, people who are experiencing homelessness on Skid Row and other parts of Los Angeles, who basically are upset that the city and the county can't react. They can't act. They're failing in so many demonstrable ways to help people off the street, to keep people off the street, and to provide them with the kind of assistance and treatment that they need so that we can kind of return to normal lives.
Why?
I think.
Why does anybody push back on that? This is what I don't understand. So you're trying to take people that are living in squalor, who are sick, and help them get better and restore their lives. What in the world could be wrong with that?
Yeah, I think that it is really a lack of political vision. I think it is it's an adherence to kind of a top-down federal and state policy that says this is how we address homelessness and this is how we help our neighbors who are in pain.
So hold on. I'm going to keep
obsession with housing.
I'm going to keep. I mean, they can continue their obsession with housing. You're not going to get in the way of that. You're just going to start helping people. What in the world would make somebody push back on that? It's just so, I don't know. The whole thing is so weird to me. It's like we're running an outdoor hospital, and it's being run by, and physicians and actual clinicians, medical people, are not allowed to interact in any way with the patients or with the policies, except when they are brought to an emergency room where you can stabilize them and send them back out to the open air hospital, which is killing 6 people a day. If that were a hospital run by physicians, they would not only have hundreds, God knows how many malpractice, there would be people going to jail for negligence. So what could possibly be the problem with getting some clinical people in there and helping out?
Yeah, I'm as dumbfounded as you are. It's the old adage that insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. I mean, this is truly the case, and this is why the LA Alliance sued both the city and the county. We kept hearing the promises of politicians. We kept hearing the complaints of communities talking about, encampments that are growing out of control and the crime that's associated it and the illnesses of the people that are inhabiting the streets. It's hard to be downtown in Los Angeles on 7th and Grand, going to a lunch meeting and see people naked from the waist up, barefoot, literally lying in the middle of the street, obviously suffering, obviously in need of some kind of care and attention, and nobody able to really do something. I mean, the city workers, the outreach workers, I can see the frustration on their face, and it's a humanitarian crisis right here in the city of Los Angeles, one of the most progressive and wealthiest cities in our country, and yet also with the dubious distinction of having the largest number, 66,000 plus, of individuals experiencing homelessness in all shapes and sizes.
Now, you said you see the frustration on the city workers' faces. So they're not allowed to help. They're not permitted to pick the person up and take them anywhere. Again, not, no matter how disoriented they are, unless they ask for that help. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's absolutely accurate.
How are you going to get around that?
Handcuffed.
How are you going to deal with that? How are you guys going to deal with that? Because that's the problem. The laws prevent us from helping.
Here's what the LA Alliance sued the city and the county, demanding that they get off of this obsession with only providing, $1 million housing options for people on the street. So we demanded that there will be more shelters, more opportunities to get people off the street, help and assist people off the street. The second thing we did is we demanded that there would be more clinical services and treatment so that you could keep people off the street, to make sure that those addiction beds and that the mental illness that we see on the streets, that the county can begin to serve those people. And the third thing that we did was we demanded the regulation of public spaces. So you're right, Drew. It's one thing to be able to say, we need to compel people. We need to intervene in these cases, and part of that is not having a policy of tolerance to allow people to suffer and die.
To suffer and die, right? Exactly. So we need to reinstitute throughout. We made a horrible miscalculation in the 60s when President Kennedy put together his Community Mental Health Care Act that destroyed the public system for mental health services. And putting further nails in that coffin, we, many years later, developed the Landrum and Petrus Short Act, which allowed people to be held against their will if they wanted to kill themselves, kill somebody else, or were gravely disabled. Most people were held because they were gravely disabled. We've gotten rid of gravely disabled. Is there any chance? I mean, people are obviously gravely disabled if they are unable to clothe themselves, they are full of lice, they are vomiting, they are on the street saying they don't want help. That's gravely disabled. That's not a brain. Again, I've said this a million times. If that person were demented in that condition, and you, the practitioner, did not help them, you would be guilty of abuse. In mental health setting, if you try to help them, you're not allowed. That's insanity.
right.
That's insane.
That's
now,
right.
what are we doing about
It's-
gravely
it's-
disabled?
It's an upside down system. So the LA Alliance is not really trying to impact the definition or the application of gravely disabled or Lynchman Petra Short. We certainly recognize it as an impediment. I think our tact at this point is to compel the county to do that which it is charged to do,
Which is
to provide public health services to the indigent, to
Right.
provide the treatment,
Right.
get out of this siloed approach that the only way that you can help people who are unhoused is to put them in some kind of housing. We want to break that barrier so that we can begin to understand that that the county has certain obligations with respect to those who are suffering on the streets and are untreated and unhoused. And the city has obligations in terms of regulating public spaces and creating more opportunities for people to get into beds and get off the street.
Any plan? We need, it seems to me, large residential living environments where people can get vocational rehab and be able to get their mental health and physical services, medical and mental services, and then start to work out in the world and then get some autonomy and independence. Does anybody have any plans to create a large system like that?
Well, I think people are starting to talk about it a little bit more. I mean, you may have read Michael Schellenberger's book, San Francisco, where he proposes this concept of CalPsych, which kind of houses all the California behavioral mental health addiction treatment under one department. So we're starting to hear those kinds of things. Let me tell you, I applaud the governor for being brave to propose the care courts as a first step to start getting people to realize that there are people who need intervention, and how do we do that within the kind of convoluted, broken, and inaccessible system that we have now. But I really want to talk about Los Angeles, and I want to talk about the success that we've achieved with respect to changing the narrative, compelling the city, and getting the city to agree to get off of their obsession with expensive permanent supportive housing, and also to start cleaning up encampments and giving people that choice that they deserve. And I have to tell you, whether I'm on the west side or whether I'm downtown, I am starting to see some welcome progress in cleaning the streets and removing encampments and getting people into shelters and into the programs that they need. And in terms of the narrative, we've got a mayoral race. We've got 8 out of 15 city council races. Everybody's talking about homelessness. Everybody is talking about cleaning our streets. Everybody is talking about the dangers of encampments, and everybody is talking about the need to focus on mental illness and addiction. So I think those are huge victories, and I'm going to credit the LA Alliance and the fact that a bunch of pissed off people can make a difference through the courts.
Well, and not just pissed off, but despairing. I mean, I've had such despair and anguish looking at this stuff. I had it for 10 years. I see what this is. These are my patients. I know how to treat this population. This is not Michael Schellenberger's book. What's that, Paul?
Yeah, you're so uniquely qualified, Drew, and I applaud you for, you're the guy on the ramparts shouting, that we've got a fire, and people are now starting to wake up and say, hey, is that barbecue, or do I actually smell the smoke of a fire?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, you're to be commended. You've been a champion on this.
But as it pertains to these various city council positions and mayoral positions that are open, are the incumbents talking about all those things you just mentioned?
Absolutely. Let me just praise the city council. Just a couple of weeks ago, they took up an ordinance that would ban encampments within 500 feet of schools. I mean, that's progress. That's progress.
That's something.
We've got we've got these progressives who have done nothing but get in the way of alternatives, of understanding reality. Folks like Councilmember Mike Bonin, who is he generated so much displeasure in his district because of the way that he handled homelessness, and I think council members understand that.
I hope so. They tried to recall him, didn't they?
Yeah, they did try to recall him, and they came very, very close. And then I think he was looking at various data and said that he would no longer seek another term instead of seeking confronting the challenges in November. But so I think and let's also I think one of the things that we have to talk about and that is, how do you hold the politicians accountable for the promises that they have failed to produce?
I have said for a long time that if we can limit their qualified immunity and held them accountable for reckless, negligent manslaughter, I've said this forever. This is a if a physician were involved with this, it would be reckless negligence. And I would say a politician is equally a professional and should have some standard they're held to because of their qualified immunity. They just blow it off. But if they actually are responsible for the 6 deaths every day on these streets, you don't think they would do something or be a little more heated at getting something done? Ugh.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, but I do want to encourage people. I do want to kind of shed some light on the fact that by bringing this lawsuit against the city and the county, by engaging a federal judge, there's been a number of articles written about Judge Carter, David Carter, and his engagement on this issue. We saw what happened in Orange County, how he really navigated and brought a community together. And now when you go to the Santa Ana riverbed by Angel Stadium, the encampments are not there. There's not a sign of them anywhere. So there's some successes there. How do we bring that, and how do we get the courts to provide the accountability and provide the oversight that's needed to make progress in this issue? And that's one of the huge benefits of the LA Alliance case against the city and the county, is that judicial oversight from the federal bench. So there are a lot of problems and there's a lot of challenges from the state, from federal policymakers. But I think here in Los Angeles, with our settlement with the city and our continued efforts with the county, we're starting to see some changes.
Didn't that judge's decision get assailed or appealed?
No, I'm glad you brought that up. So here's what happened. So back about a year or so ago, the city and the county voluntarily entered into a settlement, remember, with respect to the freeway underpasses and overpasses. I mean, we've been very successful, and the city and county has been successful in increasing by more than 6,000 beds, places for people around who are encamped around the freeways to go. And we've cleared out a number of freeway underpasses. If you go out to the West Valley, by Tampa and Winnetka, out in the valley, there are overpasses that are cleared out now, and that's huge progress. But what happened was, I think that Judge Carter issued an order. I don't know if you recall this, about a year ago, he issued an order where he tried to escrow $1 billion from the city of Los Angeles, right. And reasonably, I think the city appealed that. The Ninth Circuit Court took that up. The term is they vacated that order. So they basically said, you know what, there's merit to this case. We're not gonna throw the case out. We're not gonna dismiss the case. We're gonna vacate that order because we think it went too far, and we want you, LA Alliance, to file a new complaint.
Oh wow!
Which we did. We did, and based on the merits of that complaint, we've reached the settlement with the city, and that's good progress. So yeah, this concept that this suit is null and void, nothing can be further from the truth. There was one item, one order by the judge that was vacated, and now we're the settlement with the city is final. The city council adopted it. The judge accepted it.
And what's
So
that going to
now-
mean? What is that going to? How's that going to be operationalized?
Okay, so this settlement agrees to 4 things: to create housing and shelter immediately, to get people off the street. They've already committed to billions of dollars and a number of units and beds to create. They also have pledged to reduce encampments. We've established deadlines and targets to determine the success of this effort. And they've agreed to return public spaces to their intended use. So this is a huge victory. This is a historic victory, just in terms of a couple of things. For a group of citizens to be able to petition the courts and say, this is unreasonable, the city is allowed to continue in this direction, and for us to succeed, to have the city agree to these terms is significant. And it's significant not only because we're going to be increasing the capacity, increasing the shelters and the housing, but also the fact that we're going to be regaining our public spaces. And the city has agreed to reduce encampments. We've got milestones, we've got deadlines, we've got targets. A lot of those things are still in the works to be determined.
How much money do you figure is available for the treatment of homeless now? Total, just the treatment side. Because the people on my Restream are going, we should be getting money over to them. No, there is money for treatment. How much would you estimate is there? How much estimate, approximately?
Well, we know right now that LA County, through its Mental Health Services Act funding, is sitting on something like $1 billion.
Right. So Christine, there's $1 billion available to treat people with homelessness. That's what I figured it was $1 billion. It's $1 billion available. We cannot use it because of the laws. They won't use it. This is the part that people don't get. There's tons of money to deal with homelessness. You're not permitted to go in there and go, hey, come with me, let me help you. You're not permitted. Until they show up dead on your doorstep, you can't do anything. That's the insanity of what we've got here in California. Ugh, it's disgusting.
And I have to point out that we are in conversations with the county. For a good 2 years, the county didn't want anything to do with this lawsuit. They said, we'll see you at trial, best of luck. And we were persistent. And I'll have to say, we launched a public persuasion campaign. We launched a campaign to get citizens to contact their county supervisors and convey their concerns. Exactly what you said, Drew. We need to compel our county supervisors to say, start to act, start to treat.
Help these people. Help them. Get them in, get them treated. And there are a range of problems. It's not like every homeless person is the same. There's schizophrenia, there's bipolar, there's various drug addictions. Meth is ubiquitous. There are medical problems galore that need attention, infectious diseases of all types. It is catastrophic and being completely ignored. But anyway, so we're moving forward that way.
No, and what's happening right now is people understand. People are understanding. I mean, come on, Drew. Just about 4 or 5 years ago, there was just some kind of a mass denial of the impact of mental illness and addiction on homelessness.
Listen, 2 things. So I was appointed to the LA Housing Authority, which is it's essentially the homeless committee that allocates all this money. LAHSA. And people freaked out that a physician was going to be on the panel. There are no physicians anywhere determining how things are going to be allocated. And I went in and said, look, I've got a open mind and open heart. I don't know what you do, but I want to learn. I want to see what's going on. LA Times wrote a hit piece. The LA County Board of Supervisors freaked out. They're cowards. All of you are fucking cowards. So be that as it may. Now maybe
strikes back.
Yeah. Now maybe we'll start to move in the right direction. Although I don't quite see, Sheridan is quitting. I don't see how you're going to do it without more clinical oversight. But okay, that's a relatively solvable
No,
problem.
you-
At least you're moving in the right direction.
No, you're bringing up great points. I mean, one of the points you're bringing up is how housing initiative versus mental illness, DMH, Department of Mental Health, addresses homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that there seems to be this lack of understanding on the behavioral health side as part of the county's homelessness initiative? I think that's important. People need to become aware of that. I think the second thing you bring up, particularly with respect to your recommendation to the LAHSA board, is that the board of supervisors can be moved. They can be pressured.
Well, you
and
were
if enough people.
apparently. I mean, you're having the first. You're drawing the first evidence that that's the case. I mean, I wouldn't believe it. But they need to be thrown out is what needs to happen. They need people in there that are sane and can help people and are pragmatic and just solve the problems. It's not that hard. People, I remember when I was talking to, it was a state senator, and he was talking about this problem, and I was sort of railing on him. He goes, "Well, do you have any ideas?" I go, "Yes, I got a ton of ideas. I know exactly how to do this. It's really easy. All you got to do, restore gravely disabled, get residential beds going, I don't remember the name, 57 and 47.
Yeah, 47, 57,
47,
81,
57. Maybe you want to get rid of those. That's ridiculous. Have drug courts or assisted outpatient treatment, so people aren't put in jail. They go to treatment, and let's just start doing this. I have a ton of other suggestions, but there's a lot that's easy to do. The hard part's the treatment. Let me tell you. Once you get them into treatment, you need skilled teams that know how to do that. That's what Art and his wife, right? They know how to do that. They're trying to help other cities do the same.
So, Drew, are you saying that they're not going to be able to use this $1 billion budget to do anything because of the laws?
They're going to have trouble. They're able to do things, but there are going to be limits, and it's going to be a slow progress. I suspect
it is slow.
Yeah, and they're not going to be able to really do stuff until they start changing the laws.
So,
but
250 more people will die before they get maybe 1,000.
Oh, 10,000, easy. But the idea though is that gravely disabled can still kind of be used if people have a little bit of courage, and if they just start using it again a little bit, then you'll be able to see, you'll set a trend that will allow for clinicians to start to bring people in that are gravely disabled. That's the problem. You need to protect gravely disabled.
We have a mutual friend in San Francisco, Tom Wolf. He's a tremendous advocate for recovery.
Yeah.
He said something once that's become my mantra. And he said, "Paul, we need to make it easy to get treatment and hard to deteriorate on the streets."
Exactly. When people, that's exactly right, Paul. So when people say you're forcing treatment, no, you're not forcing anybody. You're motivating treatment. You're making it, look, you know how many people I treated came to treatment and got sober because they were arrested? I would say most of my patients, that happened all the time, because there was a consequence. Consequences break through denial. Consequences is how people are able to sort of go, maybe I should stop doing this. If you create no consequences, they will progress. And this is the part that everybody misses. They progress until they die. And when you and I walked the Skid Row last time with Andy Bales, and thank God he's now on LAHSA. I believe he's on LAHSA, isn't he?
That's right.
All right. So that's going to be, that's helpful. He at least understands the clinical landscape. I had a sort of an insight. We were there with Anthony Brown and others, and I just thought, oh my God, they're all drug addicts. I never really realized that everything at Skid Row was about drug addiction, and it really was. And I asked the workers at the rescue mission, I said, when was the last time you brought somebody in that didn't have a drug or alcohol problem? And if you remember, they looked at me and went, I can't really think of anybody. Okay, well, there you go. There you go.
No, it's so true. I mean, I commend this book to everybody. I commend
which book? San Francisco?
Well, I do commend San Francisco, but I also commend The Least of Us by Sam Quinones.
Yes.
So, and Sam has done absolutely superlative work in demonstrating how these new potent synthetic versions of methamphetamine and fentanyl have become so cheap and so ubiquitous. And the fact of the matter is that this narrative that homelessness is just a housing issue. It's being destroyed by the facts. And it's being destroyed by the fact of just what you said, is that so many people admit, so many people focus on the fact that everybody that are so many people on Skid Row, so many people in encampments are on methamphetamine and fentanyl.
And somebody on Twitch goes, correlation, not causation. I don't care. It doesn't matter what causes them to go to the streets. They now have addiction, and it has to be treated because it progresses to death without treatment. So who cares why they got there? It doesn't matter anymore once somebody has a life-threatening illness. You got to treat the life-threatening illness. Then you can also deal with whatever got them onto the street. But once you have addiction, you have a life-threatening diagnosis, and it must be dealt with. And it has to be dealt with before you can deal with anything else. That's the way addiction works.
Yeah. And I think here's the challenge is, like this, Twitch comment, there's this ideology, there's this prevailing understanding among the experts and the elites that housing is some kind of panacea. And
wish it were. Wish it were. It'd be awesome.
Yeah,
if I could treat addiction, with putting somebody in a room, oh my God, would my job be easy? My job would be so easy.
Well, exactly.
It'd be the best thing ever. I would just put them in a room. They are more likely to die in those rooms because they're going to be really progressing out of sight then.
Well, we've seen that. There's studies out of Boston that show that, the more people that got into permanent supportive housing died in permanent supportive housing because of the isolation and the challenges of their drug addiction. There's real challenges. But here's the point: is we have to break through this artificial dichotomy of treatment and housing. I have a dear friend.
Yeah, they go together. And then, by the way, don't think that because somebody is using less drugs or stop using drugs, their addiction is treated. That's not how addiction works. You have to have treatment. Even if you stopped last week, you still need treatment. You will use again. That's the nature of addiction. Well, you go back.
No, this is your point, Drew. Is there's so much naivete when it comes to the understanding, fundamental understanding of mental illness, fundamental understanding of addiction, particularly chronic addiction, and fundamental understanding of how these things are tied to the crisis of homelessness. A dear friend of mine whose son is seriously mentally ill, she talks about that the only thing that helped her son finally get into a suitable adult residential facility, it was not the county, it was not the state laws, it was not the fact that he'd been arrested more than 40 times, it was luck and heroics. So this gets back to this point, is the reason that we need to make it easy to get treatment and hard to decompensate in the street, the reason that we need that is because right now it's hard to get treatment and it's easy. We're incentivizing people to decompensate and deteriorate on the streets.
Right. We are prioritizing the illness. We are prioritizing these illnesses. We're not just prioritizing the illnesses. We're prioritizing and protecting the symptoms of these illnesses. Anosognosia, denial, distortion. We're putting those as civil liberties. To show you how ridiculous it is, it's as if we would put confusion and disorientation, which is part of it, but always present in dementia. If we protected that in dementia, it's exactly what would happen to demented patients. They would end up on the street and they would not be able to take care of themselves and they would die. Why these illnesses end up on the street and we do nothing is just mind-blowing to me. Well, listen, I got to take a little break. Hold on a second. Is there a website you want to send people to, Paul, while we're talking about it?
Well, I'll tell you what. If people want a very easy way to convey their displeasure to the County Board of Supervisors, please go to the LA Alliance website, and there's a letter. The web address is www.la-alliance.org/support_letter. If you go to that site, you can put your address in. It will automatically determine who your Los Angeles Board of Supervisor, and with a push of a button, you can get a letter saying, we need to start treating these people. We need to start acting on this issue. We need to start, I don't say this, Drew, but we should say, we need to do what Dr. Drew says.
Yes. Well, stop being recklessly negligent. And I'll throw in the word manslaughter, because that's what I would be held accountable for. If I were in a position of authority as a physician overseeing the care of these kinds of patients, it would be reckless, negligent manslaughter on my part. So why is it not on their part?
Yeah.
Anyway,
there's a lot of duplicity going on.
Yeah. So anyway, be that as it may, let's take a little break. We are out on the Twitter Spaces, and if you raise your hand there and request to come up, I'll bring you up to ask questions. Paul will stay with us.
Don't be afraid. You can ask questions about anything.
Don't be afraid or anything. Yeah, anything you want to ask about. If we start going down a different path,
Drew won't yell at you,
which I'm happy to do, we can let Paul go. But if you have questions for Paul, we'll keep him here too. Again, just raise your hand and realize that if you raise your hand,
I think you can have Paul up at the same time too.
Yes, I can.
In case they ask him a question.
Yes, we can. And if we do so, if you do come up, you'll be streaming out on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, everywhere.
Yeah.
And,
so don't be scared.
Yeah,
we're not trying to make you nervous.
All right. Now a little bit with our friends from Geniusel. Don't know where to start on your skincare journey either? We all have that something we'd like to take care of. For me, it's the under-eye bags and puffiness when I don't get enough sleep and the dryness here. Thankfully, I discovered Geniusel. I started with their serum for under-eye puffiness and then found their Geniusel XV moisturizer, which dramatically changed my face's texture. After only a few uses. For Susan, she hates the annoying area under her nose during allergy season. She tried everything, but no matter what, her skin is dry and flaky and nothing seemed to help. Till she found Geniusel's Silky Smooth XV moisturizer, soaked right in. She was hooked after one use and now loves all of their other products. Geniusel uses a proprietary base formulated by a pharmacist and clinical levels of botanical extracts for the best skincare money can buy. Geniusel products are cruelty-free, natural, and made in the USA. I cannot think of a better set of products to take care of my skin. Plus, they guarantee happiness with all of their products. See results you love guaranteed or your money back. Try Geniusel's most popular package today and use code DREW for 10% off your entire order. That's GENUCEL.com and code DREW for 10% off. Well, Paul's mic was open during that whole ad, Caleb, so whatever Paul was talking about, we got to hear it. So, Caleb, do we have to rerun that commercial at the end maybe to
No. That it actually went out to everyone. I just don't have control
without Paul's commentating.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Thank
good.
you, Caleb.
So I got Paul. Okay, good. So we're here with Paul Webster again from LA Alliance and Hope Street Coalition, which has been remarkably successful in taking a ideological stronghold. I would call it a cabal, and moving them towards sanity, where humans are actually helped by their policies because they can easily can easily happen.
So let me just put my Hope Street Coalition hat for a minute on.
Yeah.
So one of our big initiatives is really reform of the continuum of care program. This is the federal policy on homelessness assistance run by the continuum of care, like LASA, reforming that and integrating it with reforms to how treatment is provided. We're calling this initiative the Housing That Heals Initiative.
Good.
And it really speaks to this idea that, you don't have to bifurcate. You don't have to make distinctions between housing and the provision of clinical services and treatment.
Well, but I will tell you what, there's this weird bias towards permanent housing, right?
Sure.
And that's really permanent housing down the road, yes. But initially, the 60,000 people, or maybe 100,000, they're out on the street, need residential treatment programs. Their ability to survive in an independent environment in a permanent housing may be a year or two off. So in the meantime,
that's exactly right.
Get them into these residential programs. Now we need more residential beds, but there are people that know how to set up these things. We could easily do it.
That's right. Yeah, this is the key. Is right now there are almost zero rungs in the ladder.
Yes.
If to go from being an encampment to being in an apartment and that's paid for with subsidies and to assume that people are going to be successful there, that just denies reality. And listen, I'm not suggesting that we do away with the ability of people to become housed who are able to do so.
Of course.
But what's ignored in this entire conversation with respect to affordable housing, permanent supportive housing, et cetera, is people's behavioral needs and their acuity levels.
Right.
And this is one of the remarkable things that has come out of this LA Alliance versus City of Los Angeles settlement. The City of Los Angeles has actually committed itself to housing people with low acuity and directing people with high acuity to the county of Los Angeles so that they can receive this kind of integrated care, housing, residential services, treatment, boarding cares. You know, I talked to a provider of crisis addiction and mental illness treatment, and this is what she said. I said, it sounds like you've got a good program. You're helping people, things like that. What do you need? And I thought this was classic. She said, we need sober living homes and boarding cares that don't smell like piss.
Yes. You need quality residential style living. Yes, that's correct. With adequate staff. With adequate staff.
Housing that heals is a statement that says, yes, we need housing, but we need housing that's directed, that results in something that is gaining people's health, that is providing for people's needs.
It's a healthcare environment. It should be, of course, it should be humane and cleanly.
Exactly.
Anyway, people on Rumble, you seem to have a misconception. We're on Twitter Spaces. People get onto the phone through Twitter Spaces here. There's no calling in per se. Like, we're going to put my own worst something in here right now. My own worst tweet is about to come up and speak. There you are. Unmute your mic. Your mic is still muted in the lower left-hand corner. There you are. What's happening?
Hi, Dr. Drew.
Hey, good.
How you doing?
Good.
I just wonder, I just heard a news report somewhere. I'm not sure exactly what the news station was, but they said there are apartments being built, but they cost like $1 million a unit. I didn't know if you got any more insight on that.
They're about $500,000 a unit, and we have to build them for. There's some. Paul, maybe you can address this. People get confused about this too. So the activists are demanding permanent housing for everybody that's on the streets before anybody gets off the streets, which again is hurting people badly. And so to create $500,000 units for 60,000 people, just do that math on your phone. Yeah. And so am I getting that right, Paul? And where does that stand?
Yeah, absolutely. So what the caller is referring to is there was an article in the LA Times, I want to say it was yesterday or the day before, which basically front page LA Times, $1 million permanent supportive housing for in places, you know, closer to the beach. And so I tweeted this article out. I said, finally, the economic reality of assuming that you can build your way out of homelessness is you know, being considered at the LA Times.
Right.
And this is one of the arguments all along. You know, I mean, you think about, there's this argument on the affordable housing side that says, oh, we've got to create more affordable housing because people are so rent burdened. What they mean by that is so much of their income is going towards rent. Yeah. And I agree. We do need a whole diversity of different types of housing.
For sure.
But here's the challenge. When that's your only tool in the toolbox is expensive housing that's unsustainable,
right?
You're not going to be able to provide very much of it, and you're not going to be able to sustain it for very long. And
you still need the mental health services on top of that, which is the more serious thing. And I did a radio show for a while. My partner on the radio show pointed something out. She goes, you know, if rent stress, if how serious, you know, and I'm not trying to diminish how difficult it is to sustain housing in this city. I get it. My kids are trying. It's impossible. But she said, you know, we have 2 million undocumented workers, or let's say 700,000 undocumented workers came to Los Angeles without a passport, illegal, not documented, without family, without money,
no subsidies,
None of them are on the street. Not one. You never find an undocumented worker on the street. So how hard can it be if somebody can get up here and figure it out with none of that? No family, no relationships, no job, no passport, no nothing. They're never on the streets. What should we make of that?
Well, I will have to say I do have personal knowledge of some undocumented workers, and the thing that's connected
on the streets?
is not
On the streets?
Yes.
That are non-drug addicted?
Well, there you go. That's
Yeah.
what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Is that there are people who fall into addiction regardless
All right.
of their citizenship
There you
status.
go. There you go.
And they end up on the streets. But yeah, I mean that's a different comment. But I think what you're saying is why is it that we do such a great job? Why is it that we've made the policy decision to disincentivize self-sufficiency and disincentivize any kind of rehabilitative function of our society and programming in lieu of just providing greater and greater entitlements and subsidies?
Right.
And that, I think that's the big challenge is, there's an old law of economics, and the law of economics is that if you want more of anything, you subsidize it.
Yeah.
If you want people, I mean, this is the thing, right? If you want more housing, then subsidize housing.
Right.
What we're finding in California is that we're doing the opposite thing because we regulate the production of housing so much that we get less of it.
Right.
That's
another issue is our how we.
It's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
But it's not disconnected. And so here's the other thing that's a real challenge is why is the policy so focused on giving everybody their own apartment?
Right.
This is federal policy that comes down from Congress all the way down to the local level. And communities, here's the thing. Los Angeles, wealthy community, gets hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government just for homelessness assistance alone every year. But we are handcuffed because we can't consider these concepts of congregate housing.
Right.
We can't consider these concepts of shared housing.
And I will tell you that what people with these illnesses need is communal living for a while. They need to support each other. They need to, that's what's needed. I've treated it for 30 years. I know how it works. And one person cannot impact a person's addiction. You try to do it yourself, it'll destroy you and it'll destroy that person. It requires teams of people. I never even I won't even go in the room alone with a drug addict because of how I get sucked in, as everyone does. You can't be a buddy to an addict. You can't be their recovery. Right. It has to come from them, from the community, from the fellowship, from the process, and you have to have motivation. You have to help them motivate to stay with it.
No, you're talking my language, and I want to plug Sam Quinonez's book For the Least of Us again.
Yeah.
At the very, very end of the book, he talks about this community in Ohio, Portsmouth, Ohio, that developed a recovery community.
Yes.
And the question is, well, what's a recovery community? Well, they had clinical services. They had recovery clinics.
Yep.
And they were successful.
Yep.
And so what happened was people that were seeking recovery came to Portsmouth, Ohio. And the good news is that they actually found support with one another. They began to engage in if there was an empty warehouse, they said, you know what, some of us have construction backgrounds. Let's build apartments so people as a part of our recovery community can live here.
It really requires it. It just requires that to get over these things. And
but here's my point is why aren't we allowing and incentivizing the creation of recovery communities if we know that they can have positive outcomes?
This is the kind of stuff I would have been raising if I'd been on the LASA committee. I would have gone, well, I wouldn't have bulldozed. I would just go, why are we doing this? This is what works. It's so odd that you're not asking somebody who knows how to treat these conditions, make them better, restore people to their functioning again. I don't know. My own worst tweet, did we answer your question? I've left you sitting there while Paul and I went on. Are you okay? Are you there?
Success.
Success. Okay. Paul says success. Okay. I'm going to remove you from the front here and see if other folks want to come up. Again, if you're in the room here, you want to ask a question, just raise your hand and I'll bring you up, just as my own worst tweet came up here. Yeah, I guess I don't have the intestinal fortitude so much. Oh, my own worst tweet is back. Okay. Let's see. He wasn't done yet. Let me get him back here. And then don't forget to unmute your mic. There you are. You're back. Your mic is muted again. But I've just been so frustrated. There you are. What's going on?
I'm sorry about that.
That's right.
My kids came in. I don't want to interrupt. How does there's grant money for LA, or is it based on median household income? I just wonder how that works.
So you're getting into the policy weeds. So you're talking to the right guy, not me, Paul.
Yeah. So homelessness assistance is funded at the federal level, the state level, and in Los Angeles at the county and the city level. So remember, the citizens of Los Angeles passed two different forms of taxes. They passed Triple H, which was a $1.3 billion bond measure for the exclusive provision and creation of permanent supportive housing. And they also passed H, which I think it was a 1/4-cent sales tax that the county raised in order to provide the kind of clinical services to residents of permanent supportive housing. So those were local initiatives. I think in 2019, I did an analysis, and between federal, state, local, and even some of the nonprofit, private philanthropic revenues, the city of Los Angeles received about $6 billion in 2019 specifically to address homelessness. And that's only gone up.
But the only clinical services I see them rendering is social services. Social workers are not trained to deal with medical problems. They are social workers who essentially just sort of check up on them and make sure they're doing whatever this, I don't know. I don't know why, just sustaining them where they are, I guess. I don't know what social services would do unless you're a part of a case management where there are multiple practitioners taking care of a single patient. Then social services starts to make sense to me.
Yeah, but those are the accountability issues that we need to focus on when we're talking about what's going to move the needle. I think one of the most amazing pieces of public policy from the federal government that comes all the way down to the local government is the point in time count. It's just the most naive way to measure success.
What is it?
And because of that, nobody knows. I mean, people know just because they drive around and they look at, encampments are bigger today.
Yeah.
But statistically, HUD does a fabulous job of hiding the ball so that people can't quite understand whether or not homelessness is going up, going down, or staying the same. Mm-hmm. So we need those kinds of policy reforms as well.
Yeah, and the way they study homelessness is ridiculous. The 27-year-old with a clipboard asking them if they have mental illness. I don't know anybody. There's almost nobody with mental illness that really identifies as having mental illness, especially when they're in symptomatology. Yeah. Whether it's addiction or otherwise. Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, here's the thing. We have so much technology. I can buy a concert ticket in Florida, Miami, Florida. I can buy a concert ticket on my phone right now and get a ticket and go, whatever it is that I want to do, concert ticket, sporting event, et cetera, on my phone. And yet you can't empower our outreach workers and our programs to really drive data that makes very specific decisions and help us understand better of what's going on in the street. Well, you'd have to have a clinical person doing the interviewing to know what how does essentially a census worker know how to do a psychiatric evaluation? I mean, that's the part that I find so weird that
Well,
another weird, crazy thing about this is like you send people out there with a clipboard to do psychiatric. How could you possibly know who you were talking to, what their conditions
that's not
were?
their intention.
Yeah.
Their intention is to try to enroll people so that they can get them housed, which is commendable, laudable. But
every
to
time
your point,
every time I read, there's only 12% mentally ill in the streets. Like, how do you know that? Who collected that data? That's crazy.
well, there's actually a very interesting study by the UCLA Policy Lab that just came up about mental illness and psychosis in Los Angeles, and what percentage of those individuals, were known by the county of Los Angeles.
Okay.
So I have to find that online, but I just started reading it the other day, and it's a pretty stark. The whole process of intake, recognition, trying to compel people into services, trying to get people into treatment. It's such, to your point at the very beginning of the show, we deinstitutionalized, we essentially destroyed the mental health infrastructure in our country.
Yes.
And now, we've got outdoor asylums, we've got encampments that are full of all kinds of dysfunction and morbidity and mortality.
Another thing, by the way, read the book American Psychosis if you want to read the history of how we got here. But in addition to Sam Quinones' The Least of Us, which tells you about how meth has swept the country and how you can map the kind of methamphetamine that's being produced now, essentially in people's garages, and how that is causing such bad psychotic illness, you can map its distribution with the rise in homelessness in different communities.
That's right.
Right. Darn. I had another. What do we do? When I've been down at Skid Row, I've always been just mortified by how much control there is by the gangs. What are they doing about that?
I can't really speak to that very much. I know it's just it's an anecdotal issue, but yeah, I've heard so many accounts of gang activity. I've heard accounts of sexual predators hiding out in encampments. I've heard accounts of sexual trafficking. All of these things are beginning to convolute.
I have no data on this, but I have had people who work in Skid Row who say all the women down here get trafficked eventually.
Yeah.
And and why isn't that a national headline?
Yeah. Well, and I think part of the problem is that we've had a very significant, essentially PR campaign that forces people to talk about homelessness within the narrative of housing. It's all about housing, and it's all about and it's all about the provision of housing.
It's why
we've had this very successful
It's
narrative.
why I stopped screaming about it. I couldn't take it. It just was too ridiculous. But in any event, I appreciate the work you're doing. I have to wrap things up now, Paul and Caleb, because I promised the guys that are working our house they can begin drilling on our walls again in 3 minutes. So that will start up again. And Caleb, you've been listening to that before we went on the air. You wouldn't want that to start up just yet, would you?
Oh no, it sounded like they're like tearing up a road outside. It sounds like jackhammers.
Yeah, it would not sound good. So I've got to sort of wrap things up here. But
no, that's just good.
Let me just quickly look at the Restream. You guys have been great on Restream. I've been watching your comments, and also you guys over on Rumble. I'm watching you there. Very interesting comments. And it's just sort of oh goodness. Some reasonable comments over there on Rumble, and lots of reasonable comments over on Restream. And I hope you got a flavor for my level of frustration and sadness and mortification and letting my patients die on the street. I mean, imagine if you were a surgeon and you walked around the streets all day and you saw the problem that you knew how to correct surgically just left to die on the streets wherever you went. That's what I feel like all the time. But it's been that way for 7 years, 8 years, something like that.
Oh, more. Yeah, it's
been so clear to me that they were going exactly the wrong direction, and the rates of death were just accelerating, and they're just accelerating.
Right.
Every year it's more. It's 6 a day now. Every year it goes up by one more per day. We're at 6 a year now. We'll be at 7 soon. We'll be there.
The LA Alliance is targeting. We're trying to pressure the LA County Board of Supervisors. Go to www.la-alliance.org/support_letter And with one click of a button, you can convey your level of frustration and anger and upsetness to your county supervisor. So I encourage you to go and click on that link and send off a letter today.
All right. Fair enough. Thank you so much, Paul, as always. And I'm so glad that you're making progress. I didn't know it was possible, but I commend you for doing so. So here we go.
Thank you much, Drew. Thank you for everybody.
Hopefully that will pick up steam. You know, it seems like the kind of thing that once people wake up to what's going on, they'll start to go, what? And start to push a little harder, it seems to me. All right. Thanks, Paul. Thank you so much. And for the rest of you, appreciate you being here. We will be in here tomorrow. The guest tomorrow is Rhonda Swan. I'm not sure. I don't know her story exactly. I think she is, I'm not sure. But
she's an entrepreneur.
She's somebody. Yeah, she's an entrepreneur, and she
quit a six-figure job. Quit a six-figure job
to go travel the world with her kids
and turned it into a seven-figure company.
Homeschool them too?
I'm not sure, but I think
didn't she homeschool the kids too? Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see. It's sort of like, because it's interesting that she came up as a guest, because somebody just asked me the other day, what's better? Is you to get people in public school or private school, or just tour the world with your kids? This is sort of what she did. It's an interesting idea. Then put the picture back up there again, if you would, Caleb. Gleb Sibursky is a cognitive psychologist. I don't know if he's been on the stream before. He's been on my podcast before. Very interesting guy to talk about how biases are affecting all of us, and how to watch ourselves for these biases so we're not, help us get out of the camps we're in, that we have biases, and those biases we all have them, and they need to be carefully managed and subdued and sort of wrestled into submission, and Gleb will help us do that. So and don't forget the bobblehead. That's right. It's drdrew.com/shop. Susan would freak out if we didn't mention that. And Leopold, I saw you in the stream here just a minute ago. Oh, there you are again. I did not check for asbestosis. Oh, no, we don't have asbestos. We don't. There's the bobblehead right here. But I got to get Leopold in here. We owe him an appearance on the show, so we're going to get that going soon enough. So until tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I'll see you then. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help. Pilates, yoga, all very important. I don't think with any of those interventions, they would include sucking your own dick. So I would just say, maybe that's not a great way to sort of measure your progress.